Hey there, welcome to SharkCast Pod, a podcast dedicated to the greatest sporting club in the history of the world, the mighty Cronulla Sharks. This podcast is brought to you by Dyson Logistics, the Royal Motor Yacht Club in Port Hacking, and Jason Hawes at Cripps & Cripps Real Estate. I am Sam Shinazzi, I am OG 2015, and on the other end of this podcast is a good friend of mine, good friend of the show's. We don't get him very often, but when we do, we make it count, and that's what tonight's going to be. He is a podcasting guru. He came from the long-running interview series of Talking with TK, and then he's moved on to very successful fantasy-driven content, which is killing it, and people are just obsessed with fantasy. And he's just a terrific all-round lad. He's my good friend, Tristan K'Nell. TK, how you going, my friend?
Doing good, Sam. How are you there, mate? Thanks for having me back on. Thanks for the intro too, man. I always love coming on SharkCast because I know I get a good intro from the man, the myth, the legend, Sammy. But, mate, it's great to catch up because we haven't caught up since Penrith game, man.
Yeah, so I was trying to think when we last saw each other. I knew that it was positive with a bunch of negativity around it, and you nailed it straight away. You said Penrith, H-Man, myself, Kieran, and you. The terrible foursome that was. We did not give the team what they needed, and we lost 42-0. So had a good time. Three other terrific, great people hanging out, watching some footy, but that was not a great experience otherwise. But good to have you on. What have you been up to? Tell us about the podcast. Spruik everything you would like to spruik.
Yeah, the podcast is doing good. Fantasy sports, as you said, was just going from strength to strength. So Talking League's actually, we've grown to 13 members and 5 shows across the week, which is always fun. The boys, we get together every Magic round, which is always great. Just went over to Auckland to see a few of the boys as well. So, New Zealand's actually huge for fantasy sports. So, really enjoyed my little trip over there. And, cool. It's just good to, like I said before we started the show, I'm just going to Africa in a couple of weeks just to climb Kilimanjaro. So that should be a bit of fun. I did say I'm going to be back for the prelim, and I'm very confident we'll be there. So,
we'll get to that because that is exciting news. We'll get to that. We're going to a prelim. You heard it here from TK. He'll tell us how we're going to get there as well, I'm sure, when it's relevant. But we haven't spoken to you much this year on air. I want to start out with just discussing where the Sharks are at, what your feeling is. There's been a lot of weird circumstances, injuries, suspensions, off-field stuff. How do you think we've gone so far, given all that? Give me something to talk about. What's going on?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed this season, Sam, because it's been such a roller coaster, ups and downs, and I'm really glad that we're actually tackling a bit of adversity, kind of, especially since that kind of Magic round, and when Nico went to Origin, didn't play that well, got injured, a whole heap of different kind of scenarios that have kind of faced the team, which I don't think we've really had that since Fitz has kind of taken over. So, I think we're actually really good preparation this time going to the semis. I was having a look at the ladder today, and we went through this whole period of not being able to beat top 8 teams. Well, we've beat 5 of the top 8, and we're one of the top 8. So literally, we haven't but we've lost to a couple of teams at the bottom as well. So it's kind of like a bit of a weird sort of scenario. But we've come out the blocks really fast. It does seem that the good thing about Nico not playing right now is that he's going to be fit for the finals. He hasn't played for a long, long time now. So out of you see Penrith, they're going to have Nathan Cleary 50-50 even to get to week 1 of the finals. There's a lot of good players at the moment. They're probably busted. So even though Nico has had surgery and he's coming back, he's probably going to be relatively fresh in terms of a lot of his body parts, because we all know every week they carry injuries, right? There are niggles, they're getting knocks. Just look at our team this week. They've had to rest Sifa because incredibly long season from Sifa. He's playing back in the middle, apart from last week, playing on the edge. So his game has just changed a lot. So he probably needed a rest this week as well. But I think we're in a really good shape. When you have a look around us, right? You have a look at Penrith and Melbourne and the Roosters have relatively soft draws into the lead up to the semis as well. So they don't have relatively great run into the semis either. Look at the Bulldogs. They've got a relatively hard one. But how much steam have they kind of run trying to get to the finals as well? I think they're kind of like us from a couple of years ago, where they're already playing their best footy. And then that's where we kind of stumbled into the finals because we didn't have a gear past this. I think the Bulldogs are already in their 5th gear at the moment, where a lot of the teams above us, including us, we haven't hit that fit top gear yet. So I do think they were in a relatively good shape, even though 19-18, again, we look back to the history of the Sharks and what we've done in the past. Like, reminds me a lot of 16 because you just get the wins. Like, you get the wins. It doesn't matter how you play, but a good team will always find a way to actually get that win. And yeah, I'm really liking what, even though we've copped a few losses over the last couple of months, I still think that we're still building into something, and I still think that we can kind of compete, man.
Yeah, I think the difference from 2016 to this season, TK, is that we can't quite smash those lower teams. Like, we know that when we played Newcastle in 2016, we absolutely destroyed them both times. Like, we made the most of playing lesser competition. This year, not so much. And they got to learn from that, and I think they will. Just on Nico Hines, I was down at media today. He was finishing up training. He looks really good. He looks a lot closer than he's ever been. And I think it'll be a couple of weeks still, but he's looking trim and fit and happy. He's kicking the ball today, and he's getting closer. So I think you make a good point. Like, when he comes back, yeah, he'll be rusty, but he'll also be pretty fresh.
Yeah, it'll be great to see him back next week, given it's the home game. Adams, coming to Shark Park. SJ's last game. We all know our history with Mr. SJ. But I think next Saturday, I haven't been to a home game for about 3 now. I'm definitely going next week. So I'm really pumped about Saturday night at Shark Park next week. SJ, it's one of those things. He's a turbulent figure, isn't he, in our kind of Sharks history, because he had a really bad first year, great second year, really turbulent third year, right? So he's had some good moments, and we all enjoy him as the player that he is, right? Because you see the guy that he's come into the league as, the flashy number 7, and then see what he's developed into now. And you got to respect a lot of the things that he's done in the game. He's one of the entertainers, very similar in nature to Benji Marshall, really.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I felt like the end was a bit sour. Nothing dramatically bad. Like, I didn't turn from love to hate on the guy, but it was a little bit sour, and that left a slight bitter taste in my mouth. But yeah, absolute champion of the game, has done most things other than the obvious one. And I think that the Sharks will send him out, win, lose or draw, they'll send him out with a bit of a celebration at the end of the game. I'd be surprised and disappointed if they didn't. Obviously, there'll be a focus on our guys. It might be our last home game, you would think, for the year, but I think they've got something in special for SJ. It might be the ball. It might be a lap of honour. I don't know. But I feel like, given the 3 years he gave us, that'll be something to celebrate. But yeah, a danger game next week. We'll get into the run home. But what did you make of the Knights game? It was there were positives and negatives there for me. It was a dour game. Started brilliantly, took the foot off, let them back in for the majority of the game, came home with a wet sail. Last 10 minutes was great. Golden Point, pretty good. I mean, did the positives outweigh the negatives for you? Or was it a bit of a lull, or what did you think?
No, you take as many positives as you can, and you also learn from what we came out with. Like you said, the last 10 minutes was great. Probably the first 15, 20 minutes was pretty good as well. But I think what we learned is our execution probably stinks with only one half out there. So that's what you kind of learn, is the fact that, in those tight, nitty-gritty games where teams haven't done much homework on you, and we're talking about the Storm game, that was a big one where we kind of pulled their pants down because they didn't expect that style of play, that we were going to play with one half. And then McInnes is more of a distributor, Brayley defending on an edge, but really playing hooker. So we've played that kind of back-to-back weeks now. But I think Newcastle found it out because they've had 2 games to actually study what they're doing. So we can't bring that into the Dragons game anymore, because the fact is we've had 3 games and they're going to find us out with one rookie halfback in there. So it makes sense. They were able. I think Tricky could have probably played at a pinch from kind of what you guys were saying at training. If it was a semi, he probably would have been playing.
He looked close, yeah.
Yeah. So they probably rested him, just get him back to 100%. Looks like he's right on course being named this week, which was great, right? Because effectively you're going to get your 2 halves back in there. You're going to get Cam back into 13 properly, Blake back into 9 properly. And then, Will's been great all year anyway, but we've effectively got a spine that can really put some points on there as well. And the other game, I missed, was the Titans, where, all the boys just brained it that week, right? And again, the Titans were very underprepared in terms of what we're going to throw at them. And we just pulled their pants down really, really well. But yeah, just taking from the thing, I think the execution was really poor. I guess at times the handling was poor, but sometimes you also got to look at Newcastle. Like, Newcastle got one of the best players in the game in Kalen Ponga. We kept him relatively quiet, right? Like, we've seen what he's done to us in the past. So they defended pretty well. Like any team that you can keep, the Knights down to 18 points with the Kalen Ponga in there, you're probably coming away pretty happy, especially if you take them 2 points there, Sam.
I thought Blake Brayley was outstanding. I don't know if enough people are talking about his game from last week. I know he's a bit of a, mixed figure for the fans. Some love him, some think he needs to do more. I thought last week he was really outstanding. We've seen when they're down a half, he usually steps up. I don't quite know what he's going to have to do when the spine is back to normal for him to keep it that consistency and that confidence. But I absolutely love the way he played last week.
Absolutely. Just imagine next year, I mentioned Adam Fanua-Blake before there, Sam. He's the type of front rower that I think Blake's going to get a lot of quick play the balls from, and I think he's going to get the go forward going there as well. So, but in saying that, I thought Toby Rudolph, I know on the group, we've got a group chat here on SharkCast, and, after that Bulldogs loss, I know the group chat was going absolutely bananas for Toby Rudolph's head, right? So, but I'll tell you what, but in the last 4 weeks, he has been incredible. Yeah. Really incredible. He's back to kind of the best form that really got him that fat contract from a couple of years ago. I'm been super impressed with what Toby's bringing. Looks fit again. I don't know if they've been working on a little bit of his fitness game behind the scenes or anything like that, but he definitely does look a lot fitter. Oregon Confucio, I think he's gone right under the radar, can play big minutes, takes tough carries now, and just really holds his own there. He's a true starting prop now that I think people just don't realise how good he actually is. Love Royce Hunt on the bench. I really do think that he's destructive. You don't have to play him that long. 30 minutes, that's all he needs, and he just comes on, rips in, and then just gets off. Great to see Tommy Hazelden. It was good. I think it was Josh that mentioned that he needed a bit of a break, and he literally got a break the week after, which I thought he did really, really well to, Fitz did really well to rest him, and then he came back at a blinder. I think, unfortunately, he had the flu from memory last week, Sam.
Yeah.
And then he's back, and we do need him because he brings that pop off the bench, him and Royce together. Love Jack Williams. I love what he's done for the team over the last two weeks because he's played in multiple positions, did his job. He's a real team guy, and the same thing, he's been one of the best interchange forwards in the NRL. So I think that's a massive thing. Braden as well. Braden's at the moment, you can tell he's not 100%, but that 20 minutes that he comes on, it's a great 20 minutes. And then, I love our bench this week. I think it's the biggest difference between the two teams is not what if we hold them in the first 20 minutes, they're in a lot of trouble because their bench is not our bench.
Yeah. It's Derby week, we should point out, and it's an exciting week as always. And it's going to be a tough one, but you're right. If we start that well, I feel confident we can go on with it, especially with Trindle back, hopefully. He's been named. What did you make of the Golden Point fiasco, the drop goals and that kind of thing, the field goals, as we say in rugby league? Now, as far as I know, the officials were officiating the actual rule that they brought in.
Yep.
It's obviously one that needs to be a bit more flexible because, our players weren't obstructed trying to defend the field goal. And the other end, Ponga just ran into one of our guys. But did you comprehend what was going on? What were your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a hard one, Sam, because it's one of those rules that doesn't come into play very often at all. It comes into play once every 5 rounds or something. It's not one of those common things that you're going to see every single game, game in, game out. So the rule's there, right? And I guess it was a weird one because I remember back to the Bulldogs when Nico missed it from right in front, when Siffer went through, probably went way too far, unfortunately, just trying to score a try, right? And then that left Nico a little bit stranded on around the 12-meter mark where essentially he did miss, but from the referee's audio, I think they were going to say it was going to be a penalty anyway against Cronulla because of the blockers. Right. So essentially, I think it just hasn't come up enough, but essentially they're just refereeing the rules. I guess the biggest thing is how do they police it, right? Because there's a lot of different things you can kind of diagnose here, right? Are the defenders onside? Are the markers square? That's probably the first things first. Then are the blockers in? Yeah. So there's a lot to kind of diagnose here, Sam. So,
I know it was a long time ago, but are you saying that when Val kicked his kick and when the Roosters got their one in the finals the past 2 years,
were
they all kosher? Yeah,
no,
that's what I mean.
There's blockers everywhere.
That's the big problem.
Yeah, absolutely. But then, I think this might have been post that, but Sam, I think this is a very new rule.
Okay, that's fair. That's a different story. Maybe that's why they brought it in.
Plus, how we grew up too, Sam. We grew up in the same sort of era in that kind of late 80s, 90s period. And when you wanted to go for a field goal, you literally put a wall in front of him, right? Like,
That's
how many
right.
times did Mitch Healy kick a field goal with like 6 players standing in front of him?
Yeah. I'm all for the defender having a fair shot because I do think it's kind of too easy to kick a field goal in most circumstances. But I thought that was a little bit like I think the rule needs to be a little bit flexible. Like in the case of the Newcastle attempt, I thought that even though he missed, if that had gone through, I would have been able to live with that. To be perfectly honest.
Did you see what Oregon did? But he ran all the way through.
He ended up in the golf course. It was
He did.
I didn't notice till watching it at home that night, and I heard about the controversy and understood because that being at the game was a little bit murky, and watching the replay I was like, where the hell's Oregon going? And he must have realised he was in the wrong spot. He just ran. I had some.
You fucking didn't get downtown, right? That could have been a downtown of Oregon.
I know. I had some downtime chat with the coach today off record. Just hey, how's it going? A few chats, and he was talking about that, and he said, and he was sort of very sympathetic to the referees. He was very sympathetic to Newcastle. He said he'd spoken to the coach and everything, but he was talking about Oregon, and I was like, where was Oregon going? He goes, well, he just knew he had to keep running, and so he kept running. He did the right thing, I guess, because they didn't pull it back. But I thought the big positive from that game, TK, was it was a real semi-final vibe. Like, I know the quality of the game wasn't 10 out of 10. The quality was quite low in a lot of areas, but it was close. It was physical. Crazy conditions with the wind. And we we earned our way back into the game and we won. I think that's a good sign for the 2024 team.
Yeah, how weird was it, Sam, being up 10-0 after 7 minutes, after all the kind of, we're always behind by 3 tries after 20, and it's just a very unusual feeling.
I really thought they were going to go on with it. I thought this is so easy because I was watching from a good height and I was like, man, this is a walk in the park. This is Titans Part 2. Like, it really was. And then I spoke to some of the players today, and we're going to run some interviews in the next few days about it. But I sort of said, what happened? Like why, how did you take your foot off and stop playing that way? And they had different reasons, circumstance, errors, etc. But yeah, just as a fan, you watch it going, you had the perfect start. Newcastle are not doing much. Now they're winning by 8. It's like, what's happening here? So the only time I thought the game was gone was probably around the 70-minute mark before we scored. Was it before we got the penalty goal? Around that time, just before that, I was like, it's getting a bit late in these conditions to score twice, so to speak. But the team went for the 2 points, got that, and then obviously the try. Dan Atkinson, man, the Iceman, he is so calm as a player. I've really grown to love watching him play. Let's get into it. Do you think that he can find his way into the 17, or do you think he just gets back to number 18?
I think he's number 6. I think when Nico comes back, Jard started this. I got to give credit to Jard. Jard started this in the group chat, and then I backed him up. I know some of the other boys had a couple of different theories, but which is also awesome because obviously we can just chat it out. But Dan, what I don't like about Nico and also Tricky together, they both want the ball so much. They're both pure number 7s, right? And you can't have 2 number 7s steering the ship. Also think that Nico plays his best football when he's kicking a lot, when he's touching the ball a lot. And what I was finding when Tricky came back, that was he was just kind of palming it off. And that's I think why his confidence was kind of waning a little bit there as well. So the thing with Acko, he's so what's the word for it here, Sam? Like, he's just not selfish. Like, I think he knows how to just play his role.
Yeah.
Like, if they need him to step up and be the big number 7, he did it. He's done it for the last 2 weeks, right? But in any scenario, if the coach gives him the game plan, he says, Nico's running you just come in when Nico needs you to come in, or when you kind of see some eyes up stuff. And that's what he did really, really well when Tricky was out. And I think that's when we're playing our best footy. Like, right around when Tricky was kind of stood down into that kind of magic round period, like, Acko was playing number 6 and he just kind of just playing off the cuff with Nico, and Nico was doing literally all the playmaking, and they were just a great halves pairing because essentially you had one on ball, one off ball, but you had the second guy know when he had to step up and make plays there as well. I like them as a combination. Unfortunately for Tricky, because Tricky's, what I love about Tricky, he's an effort player. Like, you can tell every single inch that he is putting into the game. He, like, obviously he's not that fast, but he's like running on a treadmill nearly, but at 100 miles an hour, right? But you see it all. And then when he tries to defend, he's not the best defender, but he puts all his body weight. He's not huge. And that's the difference between him and Nico. Like, at times you don't know if Nico's trying because he's just a natural guy, right? He's this athlete, big, tall guy. He's fast. He's good looking. So you kind of get put off by some of the stuff that he does. But realistically, he's not an effort player like Tricky is. But Tricky's not an elite ball-playing player like Nico is. And in the semi-finals, Nico is our main man. Unfortunately, Tricky's not. The way our bench is structured as well, with Sifa being able to cover so many positions, we can't carry one on the bench. Because essentially our biggest strength is because when Sifa's fit, not only can we carry three middles, we can carry Sifa as well. And that's our big advantage over everyone. So we don't need a half on the bench. Unfortunately, whoever doesn't get the jersey, I think, is going to be number 18.
I get the feeling, and it's only an opinion, that at this stage, it's going to be Trindle and Hines. That's just the vibe I get. And that's not a shock. However, I cannot go past Dan Atkinson for everything he's done, the coolness which he's done it. He's barely missed a conversion. He's gotten in Melbourne and last weekend's the Knights crucial sideline conversions, then crucial game-winning field goals. And that's stuff that you just can't just sort of go, hey, thanks for your efforts. Now go sit on the bench and wait for a concussion. Like, in finals, as you said, we need people to step up. The problem I have with that, with what I'm saying, arguing against myself, is that Trindle really hasn't done anything wrong. Like, he himself has stepped up at times. He himself has been crucial in game-winning situations. But it's at a different kind of level. With Atkinson, I'm probably going to give him my life to gamble on. With Trindle, and to be fair, even with Nico, I'm probably not. So I just don't know how you kind of take that out of a team.
Sam, we've got a very conservative coach too. So
yes,
it took him a long time to get rid of Matt Moylan for Tricky, right? And he talked about wanting Trindle and Hines to, obviously develop over a period of time. So I think you do make a good point that the fact that they are the starting halves. They're the halves that started the season. Until Nico got injured, they were the starting halves there as well, right? So, but I do think at times there's going to be on fits to make a big call to actually make a big run into the finals. Like, it's one of those things that, is this the call that he has to make? This is like, it's not make or break for Fitzgibbon's career. Like, this is his third year and very successful in what he's doing. There's no doubt there's some targeted recruiting in Adam Fanua-Blake that will take us into the next level as well. So I do think that I'm feeling this is like our 15 season, Sam, like compared to if I'm looking at it kind of a premiership run. Like the 15 team had a really good shot at it, but they'll probably, one player or two players short of actually taking up that next level. And I do think that given the scenario of pretty much the entire squad, but maybe Royce Hunt staying with us next year, if you replace Royce Hunt with Adam Fanua-Blake, with respect to Royce, Adam Fanua-Blake he's not the best prop in the game to Haas. Those two are 1 and 2 on the weekly, right? So we get the 1 and 2, one of the best two props in the game. So you can't say that. Royce has done great off the bench, but he's not Adam Fanua-Blake. So you'd say that maybe next year's our 16 year that we can have a really good run at it. But sometimes you just kind of, got to have a little look at it. And I hope he does give Echo a chance, because for an inexperienced half, Sam, like what you just described, what he did, like he took that ball back nearly 30 meters last week on that touchline. So by the time he kicked the ball, that would have been a 55, 56 meter kick.
Even the one on half time, he hit the post in horrific conditions. So everything I see about him is just It's not elite. It's more clutch. He's a clutch player. The first try, the solo individual try, like, okay, you've seen better tries, but it was a great effort. And then he set up the try for Nickera. I thought he had a great game. I mean, he's green, but it's not like he's making that many errors. I don't think he's playing lights out for the whole game, but when you need him, he's there. And it's going to be fascinating to see what happens. Is there any way, if you tinker with that bench and you call Siffer a middle for whatever reason, can you drop anyone else and have, in your team, have Atkinson as 17 or not?
Yeah, I think the best bet for him getting in would be if Teague Wilton does not come back healthy. Like, because ever since, I think it's the Parramatta game where Teague did his shoulder, he definitely has not been the same player. He's been in and out of first grade every single week, kind of nursing that shoulder. I think he might have had a HIA at one point there as well from memory, but it hasn't really been that great. He had a good start of the season, right? That first 13 games was fantastic. But I guess he's back on the weekend now. We'll see how he goes. He missed the last few games, right? So there's no doubt that he's carrying something. So if there was a season-ending injury there to Teague Wilton, you'd say that him and Siffer are kind of going neck and neck anyway. Like, Siffer's been great on an edge, right? Like, he's kind of added such an element to what the half can do on that side. And I know that he misses a lot of tackles, but most of his tackles, he kind of rebounds people into other people anyway. So it's not really a missed tackle in a true sense. So, yeah, I think that's kind of where it's going to be. Because who do you reckon, Sam? So Jack Williams definitely is one of the bench players, right?
I think so. Yeah.
He has to be. And then Big Tom has to be one.
Yeah. So I'm gonna, just for this year, if they're all fit, I'm going to get rid of Tuku as a possibility.
Yep.
And then it gets a bit hazy, but sorry for the pun. Hazelton, I want him there. I just don't know if I'm going to, replace him with someone else, because Jack Williams is there. Royce Hunt's in career best form.
And Braden needs a spot too.
And Braden, I think one of the reasons the coach sort of dances around the question, which he's getting asked a lot now, and he hinted at it in one of his press conferences, is that the team hasn't been healthy all year. It's not like they've had, I think even at the start of the year, all 17 guys that you would call the 17 key guys, they've never been fit together. And I think he's assuming, given the way that it's gone, it's not going to be that way to finish the year. So he can't say, Atkinson's going to be ruled out, he's going back to second grade or whatever, because he's probably going to need him to play somewhere, given that a middle might go down, an edge might go down, it might move Siffer around, a half might go down, etc. Like, both halves have had terrible health years. So I think he's looking ahead and going, they're all going to be needed at some point. I'm not going to make some massive call now. And that may be the way it goes. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that they're all fighting fit and healthy, and he has to make a hard choice because that'd be the best for the club. But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know how I have my 17 with Atco in it. I just think that he's worth his weight. He's sort of like what Connor Tracy was, but way more clutch and in different position as well. So I'm not knocking Connor, but a different version of that, where you couldn't kind of leave him out of the team.
Yeah, it might be game scenario too, right? Because different teams have different, like, look at the Bulldogs, right? Much smaller pack of forwards. That might be a game, just say we play them in the semi-finals, that he does go with a smaller bench, and then maybe Acco does find himself on the bench. They might go with like an Acco, Sifar, they go with a Jack Williams, and then a big bopper, because then essentially you can run, if you really wanted to, you could put Atkinson, Sifar, and Jack Williams out there as a middle together if Canterbury are running a small middle as well. So it could be, we're in a very good position. So if Siffer and Hines, they play next week and we cop no injuries on Sunday, we're full strength. So
do you think Hines is going to play next week?
I hope so. From like your reports saying that he's in really good shape, I do think he needs a run before the finals. And if there's going to be one that you want to do it in, I'd rather him play at home next week against the Wars. And then, then they've got the Sunday Brookie the weekend after. So you probably don't want to chuck him into a game, the Brookie game being his first, I reckon, because that could be a battle for the top four, if not Manly season on the line as well, at a place that we don't relatively have a great record in. Like, if anything, I'd rather him play against the Wires and have a little rest against Manly.
I'm hoping, and I haven't studied the draw, but I'm hoping that the last game won't mean anything. I hope that we can rest everyone. I hope that I'm out there playing. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that. I'd rather even with Nico. Like, okay, so he plays for the against the Warriors, beautiful, gets through it, and he's great. And for whatever reason we can't move or we don't want to move, then just rest them all. Play whoever you want, and the Manly game, you just want to avoid, you want to avoid contact and. I mean, I think the one thing Fitz will say is that the team 1 to 17, the preferred team, hasn't had a lot of time to gel this year. So he would probably go, "What are you talking about? We're going to go out there and get our combinations right." So it depends who's looking at it and how you're looking at it. But it's pretty fascinating last 3 weeks. Anything can happen. It could go either way. We could drop down to 5th or 6th. We could finish as high as 2nd. It just depends. Let me ask you this. Do you have a preference on who we play in week 1? Say we finish, say we're 4th or 3rd. Do you have a preference on who you want to play?
Yeah, interesting question. Like, I don't, because we've beaten both the Storm and Roosters. Like, I would fancy us to go up. Like, I don't fear going to Melbourne. Like, It is what it is. We played really well in Melbourne. We played without Nico too. I know that they didn't have Jerome Hughes that day, but same thing. They had tried. We both have really good backups, right? So they had Tyron Wishart, we had Acco, and we brained them that day. We pulled their pants down, and we played an 80-minute game and defensive juggernaut. That great try from Ronnie to Siffer to really wrap it up, and
unbelievable.
One of the best tries like we've ever seen, right? So I don't think we fear. I think the only team we do fear is Penrith. Like, there is a little bit of a gap. Like, there's just, I don't know. When we were watching that game together, Sam, there was a mentality. They have a different mentality that we have not developed yet. Like, and they've got levels. We don't have levels yet. Like, they've got rings.
How do you broach that this year? Then do you just say, okay, we'll play you in the grand final and go for it, or what? When do we play them?
So that's the thing. I don't think you want to play them in week 1 of the finals because then because I think you can only beat Penrith once.
Yeah.
And if you're going to do it, you don't want it to be week 1 of the finals because they're coming back at you. Because the fact of the matter is like they've got a very unhealthy squad, right? So they might like have a weaker team for week 1, and then all of a sudden you play them again in the grand final, and also Cleary's playing, Sorensen's playing. Like, they've got the whole deck playing, right? So I wouldn't want to waste my win against Penrith in week 1 of the finals, even if it means going to the prelim. I would want to use the prelim or the grand final to beat Penrith because that means you have eliminated them.
Do you think we're, in a realistic time frame of not catching up to them as far as titles go, but being on their level? Because, I mean, they're coming down a bit. I feel like we're rising each year. We're getting a premier prop next year. A bunch of the guys will be at 100 games, if not more, with very similar team. Do you think we can... I can sort of see, all being well, I can see us rising from here where we're not afraid of playing them.
Yeah, I think so. I think they've done a really good job at junior development and for both teams. But I guess the biggest thing is when you have a lot of success, Sam, like your contracts start getting inflated, right?
Yeah.
And we've seen that. Like, all of a sudden, every year they're losing 2 or 3 marquee players. Like, next year they lose Jerome Luai. There's chatter about Brian Toho wants an upgrade, which essentially he probably could get at other clubs, right? So there's that. And then, they lose James Fisher-Harris as well. So they're kind of losing 2 of their really big leaders next year. And that was on the back of them losing Villiers Kikau. They've lost Stephen Crichton. It's a whole heap of different players. Matt Burton, heaps of players, like marquee players, right? They're not just like bums. Like, these guys are some of the best players in the NRL at the moment. So I think they'll just continue to do that. And I think the biggest thing now is Nathan Cleary and his body. It just does seem to be deteriorating a little bit. Like, 18, been around 24. It's kind of like, so a lot of injuries this year. Done his shoulder now and had that hammy issue, which has kind of been, I think, 2 or 3 times now over the last 18 months there as well. So who knows? I think Nathan's kind of, his health will dictate kind of how many more premierships they win. I'm sure that there'll be a couple of seasons where luck comes on his side, very similar to like Joey Johns and things like that, right? But there's going to be other seasons where his body really lets him down and he probably next year. Like, what do they do next year? So they're looking at Blaise Talagi potentially playing 5'8". They've got Brad Schneider. They've got Cole. But what happens when Cleary gets injured and they have to play a period of time without him? Like this year, especially in that game that we had, Jerome Luai was unbelievable as a 7.
Yeah, he was.
Like, which I think over the next 3 weeks he will be again. So
Yeah.
what do you do when you don't have that dominant second half? Like,
I mean, knowing them, they've probably got some kid coming up that we don't know about.
no doubt.
But
yeah.
And it's a great system. Like, as much as it's annoying that they're so good, like, I do admire what they do. And I just think that, you know, we're going to go through the mail in a little bit. And sometimes, you know, as you know, there's some negative mail, which is completely fine. I think some people, in my opinion, only don't realise how good they have it right now as a Sharks fan, even for the last, if you want to say, 10 years. But like, we all hate losing. I get that. We lose 2 or 3 in a row. It's end of world stuff. But it's actually not, because of the system they have in place, the coach, the players, the squad. The depth is really good this year. Like, for me, a guy like Billy Burns, when he signed on, we all kind of went, this isn't moving forward. This isn't great. But actually, they signed a guy who's played about 100 NRL games. He's a fringe first grader. Every time he's gone out there, he's played with his heart, his body, his soul, and played at a capability where we need him. Like, we don't need him to be the best player on the field. We need him to be at like a 7.5 every week, and he's done that. You look at other clubs, there's just, the depth is not there for different reasons. They're probably not as well run. But I just think the Sharks at the moment are in a really good place, and they need to take the next step. There's no doubt about that. We need to win a final game. We need to go to the prelim, you know, get you back from Africa, go to a prelim. But aside from that stuff, I think they're going pretty good. When they signed Fanua Blake out of nowhere, you know, Flano's like, we've got him. Tigers, we got him. Bulldogs, nah, we got him.
Yeah.
I mean, when I interviewed Oregon Kafusi last week, and he said he was nervous meeting Craig Fitzgibbon because he knows the kind of club that he runs. And he was sort of saying, I didn't have the self-belief that I could be part of that. Then he changed that tune after he met him and went, oh, no, I can fit in. That's great. But that's the reputation that others in the business have for us. And as fans, when we lose 2 or 3 in a row, we get a bit annoyed and go, we suck, we need to do this, need to do that. But the reality is, at the moment, unless I'm seeing it completely wrong, they're actually going pretty good.
Yeah. And I think Fitzy, he knew, like, deep down that Newtown had some really good players coming through for us as well, right? Look at the players that's come through. Cole Iro, he's a regular first grader now. Sees some great games from Stone Street. So that's 2. You've got, who else has come through? You've got Atkinson, who played a whole heap there last year, and have a look at his fortunes now. You saw, well, Tommy Haslemson kind of break through our team halfway through last year, but again, he come through that system as well. Toku, so that's another guy that's kind of come through as well. So there's kind of like a little handful there that I think he trusted to take the next step, and that's why he didn't go to market last year. Left enough, then Dow, obviously the Dow money really probably helped to get Adden across the line, because he would have been on a big packet in terms of Adden. I know Dow was kind of declining in salary as he was kind of ending his career, but still, he was an elite player, so still would have been a chunk of money there for them to spend. So I think they had a look at kind of what we were lacking, and Adden was what we were lacking in terms of a premier front rower. But who knows what happens, Sam? Like, NRL is just a funny game. Like, who would have thought Nathan Cleary got injured? What happens if he doesn't come back anywhere near his best? What happens if this week Jerome Hughes gets injured, or Harry Grant gets injured? It can realistically happen, or Tedesco. And then the whole comp is kind of thrown just everywhere. And then all of a sudden the Sharks have got a fully fit team. And then, you know, we've had some really good players sitting on the sideline for a while. All of a sudden they're fresh. They go for another charge, because you only have to get ready for that week 1, right? Get yourself in a really healthy, good position for that week 1 of finals, and then it's a new ball game. So
that's why it's crucial they finish top 4. I've heard a few people say, oh, if we come 5th, we play at home, we play against 8th or whatever. It's like, nah. If you want to have a shake, you need that week off. Therefore, you need to win week 1. And you're right. If you're fit and healthy, then at least you got a shot at it. I think your other point that you were talking about, guys potentially falling over, is that we've had guys fall over, as we've spoken about for the last 40 minutes. And we've had guys step up and win us clutch games, places we didn't think we'd ever win, against teams we never thought we'd beat this year. And that's only a positive when it comes down to the finals, because if we're in that position, then, if we're the team with guys falling over again for whatever reason, then at least we know we can do it. It's going to be harder, absolutely. But I think that's what gives me a bit of faith about the end of the year. And even the game against Newcastle, I know Newcastle aren't very good. I've spoken about it all year. Like, they've got one player essentially. But just to grind that out, we were missing 5 or 6 starters. The conditions were terrible. The not the officiating, but the way the rules were sort of displayed was kind of weird. And we got through it. We got the win. And all that kind of tells me that we're going to be ready for the finals, and there'll be no excuses. Like, I think that if we run out with the team that we ran out last week and we play week 1 and we get thrashed, I think it's on us. I don't think it's because Nico's missing or whatever. I think that we've done enough this year to prove, no, we can mix with the big boys, and it's on you. If you lose, then you're going to get the headlines. You're going to be called the chokers, etc. That's a lot of pressure. I get that. I know the players hear it, but that's the position they're in. They put themselves in this position where they've lost 3 finals in a row, not to mention all the other ones, but under the Fitzgibbon regime, 3 finals in a row. 4th time lucky, time to step up. I wanted to ask you about that. How do we step up in the finals? What are we going to do? How do we get to another level, or just win some games?
Yeah, I just think we play just nice, tough footy. I think we're in a lot better position. We've said it a few times now, Sam, that I think last year, we went into the finals, that first game against the Roosters, pretty busted, I feel. Like, just getting into the finals. Like, 6 rounds before the end of the season, he changes up the spine, right? So they had 6 games together, only 6 games. And then, in that game, they lost against Manly, they lost against Penrith, and then they strung a few at the end, and then they kind of crawled into the 8, right? I think we finished 6th from memory. And then we played 7th, who was the Roosters. Is that correct, Sam? I'm pretty sure that's right.
5, 6, it sounds right, yeah.
Yeah, because someone else finished 5th ahead of us. Newcastle finished 5th, right?
We were in that. We got the home game, so it must have been 6th place.
Yeah, it was Newcastle and Canberra, I think, played 5th and 8th. I'm sure of it. Anyway, I think into that Roosters game that, we were playing a style of footy that was kind of tough, but we couldn't really put too many points on the board, and I think we were out of steam. Like, you had Wade Graham, granted he's a great player, but I think he was on his last legs as well, and he was playing out of his skin, right? But he's literally a mid-30s guy that was literally he wasn't probably even in our top 17. Then all of a sudden we get a stack of injuries and he has to start and be captain again, right? That's kind of how the season was kind of dictated last year. But I'm seeing a lot of really good positives. I think last year we found out that Sifa he's a centre, but he's not a centre, right? Like, if we were only attacking, of course he's a centre.
Yeah.
But when we're defending, he's not at centre. But
not against elite teams. Like, don't get me wrong, Newcastle are not elite, but Dane Gagai's a decent player, even though he's older. He's a decent player. Yep. And there were 2 chances on the weekend, and they took them. And the first one counted. The second one, thankfully, Will Kennedy stopped it, but it was right through Sifa. So, I've seen enough of Euro to go, yeah, he's the guy. But when he's not there, it's 100% the right thing to throw Talakai in. But I think the better the opposition, the more you're going to think about it. Should he play there or not? Is there any alternative? But, I agree. I think we're in a better place this year. I really do.
Yeah, the bench everyone's just a little bit older, a little bit more experienced. I think Blake has finally figured out what his role in the team is as well. He's got so much more confidence than last year. I know that he cops a lot of criticism. You brought it up at the start of the show.
Yeah.
And I think he's really stepped up. I actually do think he might have been, was he player of the year last year?
He was, yeah.
I think he's actually player of the year this year. I didn't think he was player of the year last year.
Yeah. I'm probably leaning towards a Talakai at the moment. We've still got some time to decide on that. But Blake's been unbelievable. And I think under Fitzgibbon, he's gotten a lot better each year. And this year's been the peak. I just want to see it week in, week out. I want to see it when Hines and Trindle are there. I want to see him make some calls, make some runs. I saw today that he's made the most line engagements from dummy half. So he's actively improving his game in creating chances, getting the defense to engage, causing, being responsible for getting 6 agains and that kind of thing. So he's he's never been more involved in the game, and I think that's
Yep.
a real positive. And I would hate to think of us without him. I think he's just a crucial member of the team. I think when people kind of rag on him, I understand where some of it's coming from, but I'd love to see their opinion of us when he's not in the team this year, for example, and someone else is hooking the scrum. It's like it's not going to be the same.
And Sam, just on Blake, just how
Yeah.
durable is he? When you think he'll be 83 kilos ringing wet, right?
Yeah.
Like, he literally has not missed a game of football for 4 years since he came into grade. The only time he got injured was in that semi-final against the Raiders.
Yeah, and we were going great, and he went off, and we lost. And he's definitely got the current longest run of consecutive games. I'm not sure where the record stands or anything at the moment, but he's got the current longest in the NRL. There's not much of him, and yeah, I'm a big fan. People know that. And, to be fair, he hasn't been like clutch or amazing week in, week out over the 5 or 6 years. But there's no doubt he's getting better. And I think this year, he can opportunities, etc. But there's not much I can say negative about him this year. I personally just think, he's probably on his way to another Gallen Porter medal.
Yeah, absolutely. I love him. I think he's going to just go from strength to strength.
Yeah. Let's have a quick break, TK. Let's talk about Dyson Logistics. They offer tailored and reliable end-to-end logistics services with a thoughtful and careful approach to freight and custom requirements. They're a local service delivered globally, based on the Central Coast, but their heart is in the Sutherland Shire where they grew up. They are Sharks members, fans, season ticket holders, and they are supporters of this podcast, as well as they financially support the Central Coast Mariners. They've been involved with the Cronulla Sharks as well, behind the scenes, and just a wonderful, wonderful company. Dyson Logistics, get in touch with them, 028 339 1844, DysonLogistics.com. And TK, I'm seeing that dreaded Wi-Fi symbol, but we're coming through loud and clear, so that's all that really matters. TK, talk a bit more about your podcast. Tell people where they can listen, what they can expect. Tell us about your different shows.
Oh, it's just Talking League Pod. You're talking me up here, Sammy. I love it. But yeah, if you're into your fantasy sports, you want to get your fantasy team together. Obviously, we only got 2 weeks to go, but yeah, the boys have a lot of fun. I think there's more fun at the moment happening than fantasy talk at the moment. So yeah, I think it's half comedy, half fantasy. To be fair, so the boys just have a really good time together. So generally, I'm on a Tuesday night, which is the main show after the team lists. But we've got a whole heap. We've even got because we've got a few Kiwis boys, and they've started a show called Waz Weekly. So it's just a bit of a comedy show about fantasy, and then obviously their love for the New Zealand Warriors, which I think they do really, really well. So yeah, that's probably the little difference. I wish there was a Sharks Weekly, but I'm not going to compete with my main man Sam. That is for sure.
Now, can you tell us how quickly you jumped off that Warriors bandwagon?
Oh yeah, you know what?
It was like an athlete diving into the water.
Because I've got a lot of New Zealand friends, I wanted to obviously support them. So I actually do have a jersey.
Oh, I know.
I do have a jersey, and I sometimes wear it, and I like it. I think it's actually one of the sexiest jerseys in the NRL.
No, but I mean, last year you were all about the wahs. All I could hear from you was the word wah. I'd be like, hey, how you going, TK? You go, wah. This year, not much wah going on.
It was so easy last year to rev people up using wahs. People would just hate it so much. I don't know why the Aussies didn't really like wahs that much, but in New Zealand, it was incredible. Like their ride, when you think about what they've done as a kind of an organisation to be selling out every single game, and we're not talking Shark Park, 9,000 people. We're talking about like Mount Start Stadium with like 27,000 people or something. Like it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it is. It is, and they have a soft spot in most NRL fans' hearts, I would like to think. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that because I know you were. Oh, so you coming to the game next week? What are you going to wear? Like the half Wahs, half Sharks jersey? What are you going to do?
That's a good idea, Sam. Thank you, mate. I'm going to cut it out. I'm going to be a winner next week.
So what we're going to do on this episode, TK, is we're going to keep rolling, and we should tell everyone that, all being well, we're going to have a few more episodes this week, and one of them is going to be a preview episode. So we're probably not going to talk too much about the derby. I'll get your thoughts on it at the end, but we are going to skip to our letters section, our mail section. We've got a bit to get through, which is awesome. I want to start with Nathan. Nathan wrote to us, and he said, "Hey, Team SharkCast, thanks for all you do on the podcast. Never once do I take it for granted that your pod is a big part of my week. So thank you." And we say thank you to you, Nathan. We truly appreciate it. And he then gets a bit negative. He says, "I have to bring this up because I'm a bit miffed. Val Holmes officially deserves to be booed and booed extensively whenever he comes to Shark Park. I don't need to go into his history. Now he's a Dragon. It's indefensible. We copped his NFL BS. We copped him going to the Cowboys. We copped the 2-point dagger. And now we cop him going to the enemy, the Dargans. What a horrible ex-girlfriend, boyfriend he's been. Boo, Valentine, boo."
The thing with that one, Sam, like, didn't Val leave? It must have had something to do with Flano, right?
I don't know. Why
You would
do you
have
say
to,
that?
because he left when Flano was the coach, right? So you would have to say if he really valued Flano as a coach, wouldn't he have stayed?
Well, he's going to value him now for 3 years, so...
Money talks.
That is from Nathan. And while I bring that one up, I got another one here from our friend Sladden. And I'm not going to read out word for word what Sladden said, but I've got to tell you, Sladden gave it to me. And he gave it to me with respect. But he's had enough of the Val talk as well. He doesn't want any more Val. And he also said, he loves how much he listens to the pod every week. He loves it, which I really appreciate. And I replied, and we had a good banter. But Sladden, no more Val for Sladden. So we're only going to talk about Val when we need to, not because of Sladden, but because I do realise that my love for him is forevermore. So when we get mail like that, I have to read it out. So Sladden, that was why I read that one out. Appreciate both of you guys. I really do. Next up, we have Brett. Brett says, "Death taxes Sharks dropping the ball when the Sharkies chant gets played." Oh, that might be an old one, I think, because last week... Did we drop the ball last week? What's the date today? Let me win this. Oh, no, this is from last week. He's saying that we dropped the ball when the Sharkies chant went up. But I know for a fact we also might have scored when it was happening. So TBC that on that one, Brett. Thanks for being in touch. James said, "Wasn't our best performance. Glad we got the 2 points. Given all the players that were missing. You do think Talakai is more suited to the forwards, although he made some good strong runs in the centres. On a positive note, Atko was calm under pressure with the sideline conversion and field goal. We might need to find him a spot when both Trindle and Hines returns." That's from Jimmy in Ireland. So he's seeing things from a long way away. Thank you to Jay, who subscribed to the YouTube channel. We would love you all to do that. Blake says, "The refereeing was terrible. So many knock-ons and bad play the balls missed. Not to mention both teams with the blocking penalties. Secondly, Atkinson has ice in his veins." Ooh, I like that. "Nailed 2 field goals. He goes all right in those moments. But up until then, he showed exactly what he is, an average playmaker with little creativity.
Ooh, wow.
Couldn't break them down, and Blake needed to take more control there." So just on that, Blake, I disagree with that, as I've said in the first hour with TK, and I've been super impressed with Atkinson. I know where you're coming from, but I also think if you look at his moments, you had solo try, you had try assist, you had conversion from the sideline, you had match-winning field goal. I mean, how much more do you want this guy to do? Is that a fair statement, TK?
Yeah, I think it is. And I think Fitz covered it in the post-presser as well. You know, what I brought up before with the 1 half only. Like, there's only so much that you can do. And I think it come to a point there where Knights have done plenty of homework there on Acco. And you do need 2 halves to take advantage of the field position and the possession that you've got. So I think the Knights kind of worked out past that 10-minute mark that everything was going to go through Atkinson. And then essentially they were able to kind of adjust a little bit that way as well. So if anything, I applaud Atkinson for being able to get us back into the game and then obviously ice the game there as well. So I think it's kind of, I respect what Blake's saying, but I think it's one other thing I think is being a touch harsh.
His last comment is, a lot has been mentioned about the Roosters' record against Melbourne or Penrith, dating back to 2020. It's currently 19-1. That means 1-19, right? That's what he means?
Yeah, he does.
Yeah. If you consider Fitzgibbon to be a part of that coaching regime, which he was for 2 years, then Fitzgibbon's record against those two teams is the following: 3-24. So my question is, what? My question is, do Fitzgibbon Robertson teams get found out against the big dogs? And if so, why?
They've had incredible runs, but when you think out of the last two, well, Penrith won the last three and then the Storm won, like you're talking about the only premiers for the last 4 years. So it's probably not the best stat to be looking at, really.
It's still factual, though.
It is very factual, but I think it's just kind of eras, right? Like, yeah. And both those teams are either coming off, like, well, Storm still do have a dynasty despite even losing the likes of Cameron Smith, etc., Cooper Cronk. But then you have a look at Penrith, like, I know that we spoke about before them losing like a hell of a lot of good marquee players, but they're going through a bit of a dynasty run there as well. So sometimes you get unlucky. Like, that's like saying, like, all the teams that lost to the Chicago Bulls when, Jordan had those 2 3-peats, right? Like, it was just an incredible guy that or there's other like tennis players, right? Like, think about all the good players that had to have played against the likes of then Federer into Nadal, into Djokovic. It's just kind of like you go through an era. While when you have a look at when we grew up with tennis, that is, like, you would have a different Grand Slam champion because essentially no one really dominated like those 3 guys have. Like, sometimes you just go through eras of sport and you're going through, like, we're both big NFL guys. Kansas City is at the moment going through a dynasty because of Patrick Mahomes, right? So it's one. And then before that, there was New England Patriots with Tom Brady. Like, sometimes you just go through these periods of times where the juggernaut is just huge and there's not much you can do. Like, I don't think Fitz is just coaching the best he can. And the same as Trent Robinson. They're just stuck in the wrong kind of era right now. But in saying that, Trent Robinson had a fair record winning back-to-back premierships there as well. So he gave it to the Storm and the Roosters there. The Storm and the Panthers there as well. So
yeah, I'm a very big Trent Robinson guy. I'm a very big Craig Fitzgibbon guy. I love the way they see the game. I love the way they react to the game. I mean, even just talking to Fitzgibbon today off record, like, just, and you've spoken to him at length. He's just a fascinating dude who sees everything and cares about everything. And I respect that, a lot of people don't get that time with him. But I'm telling our listeners who don't have that time with him, we're in good hands. Like, you may not agree with everything, and he hasn't won a finals game yet, but you were the one, TK, pushing him on me for years. Like, he's a good dude.
Yeah. One thing I think Fitz needs to do, that he needs to copy Robbo. Robbo does it better than anyone in the NRL. He wears a bloody nice suit every week. And I love a coach because it's back to the kind of EPL days where your gaffer, he kind of like stood out, because I think the coach needs to wear something different to the assistants, I think, to show that he's the main man.
Fitzy's a polo hoodie guy, yeah?
Yeah, he is. And even look at Benji Marshall. I'm pretty sure the only time the Tigers win is when he wears that suit. So, there's something going on. You look classy. You set the trend. You're the main man. But it's got to be only him wearing the suit. No one else is allowed to wear the suit.
Who's going to have that conversation with him? I'm definitely not going to have that conversation with him.
I'm texting him now.
We've got Wade from Sunshine Coast. He says, what a roller coaster game. Atco is clutch. The service from Brayley was 10 out of 10. If anyone hasn't joined us on Blake Island, they have rocks in their heads. One last thing from me. I asked a while ago what kind of try-celebrator you were, Sam. I'd like to know now, when we win in Golden Point with a field goal, are you jumping out of your seat going nuts? I think my neighbours saw me jumping and running around with joy last night. What a win, up. So, Wade, I'll tell you what you should do. If you want to see me during Golden Point, go find the coverage of the game, and it's right in between end of 80 and then the start of Golden Point, and they go to the coach, and TK knows this. Good old Sam Shinazzi's just hanging out by the coach of Newcastle. It's actually an image of me from the window reflecting. I'm not actually right next to him, but it looks like it. And as Josh Bolling said, I look more nervous than the Newcastle coach. I was pretty nervous, and I have to say, because of circumstance, I was not in my seat. I was up with the Sharks staff, and there's room there to sort of move around a little bit. You don't have to sit down. You can walk around a little bit without obstructing too many people. And I was jumping around for joy when they got that field goal. And then I very quickly went to my seats where my son was sitting, and we sang the song together, which is beautiful. But I'm not a Golden Point guy, TK. I'm one of those old school people that just thinks it's not for me. Finals, absolutely, you got to have it. But I'm happy with a point. That's just how I am. I don't think I'm old fashioned in all senses of life, but when it comes to that, I just don't. I understand why it's there. You got to have a winner and a loser. I just think it was good enough for 100 years. It's kind of good enough now. And I understand the entertainment value, the TV. I get it all. I'm not a Golden Point guy. What were you doing, TK, when the field goal went over?
I was at the pub because I was watching the UFC. So the UFC actually finished early. I wasn't expecting it to finish so early. It was finished by 2:30. So realistically, had I known that, I actually would have come to the game. But we had a fair few drinks, so I was definitely not being able to drive. But just back to that Golden Point thing, Sam, I would like to see it change into like an NFL style. So what I mean by that is it can't end with a field goal or a penalty goal. It has to end with a try. Otherwise, you play the full 10 minutes out. And then obviously if you're ahead with the field goal, you win. But sure. I would like to, because I think it just kind of like kills it a little bit. Or the other thing is, I think it's been suggested before that both teams do get 1 point.
Yeah.
And then whoever wins in Golden Point gets that additional point. So
I can certainly live with that. I have no problem with that. I think the other stuff that Buzz and a few people this week are floating around is a little bit kooky with the 3 points and the 4 points. But I would have no problem with, the losing team getting 1 point, because essentially they haven't lost. They've drawn a game, and then in crazy time, it's gone on.
What is Buzz on? You can't have 3 and 4 points. I don't know how that's come up.
We had someone called Gorillas on YouTube say, Sam, just wondering if you think Talakai has bulked up this year, or was he playing at that weight and basically a second rower? He played strong, but I could tell he's no longer a centre, although he could still fill in and do a job. Absolutely love the podcast. You got any thoughts on that, TK? I need to look up his weight, but does he look like at a consistent weight year in, year out?
Yeah, because he started in the centres, right? So he would have played, I don't think because he was always being able to, I think he's just been the same side all the way through. The fact that I think if you're seeing him in the middle, I think you're probably seeing him getting more touches, and you're probably seeing him more close up and things like that. So I just think that maybe it's just an eye illusion thing. I don't think he's changed much at all. I think on the weekend, who was the writer, the question there for him? Sorry.
That was from Gorillas.
From Gorillas. So for what Gorillas was noticing, what we noticed as well, right? He was great in attack. Unfortunately, he got caught out by Gagai a couple of times in defense. And like you said really well, I think he's a great fill-in if something does happen to Iro. But Kyle has more than proven himself, and he's part of that back five. And I think that Sifa playing as that number 14, he really just takes us in terms of like the next step. I think that's kind of like part of it is him being part of that mid-rotation or starting on an edge.
Yeah, when he comes off that bench, he has so much energy, and because he's not playing 80 minutes, it's so effective. Like, he's the true impact player. Like, you would not want to be tackling that guy when you've been playing for half an hour, and he just comes on fresh as a daisy and rips and tears. It's scary stuff. Peter has been in touch. He said, a few takeaways. We really suffered from only having one specialist half. Our attack just seems a bit disorganised at times, which I think is completely fair. I think that... people saying Atkinson needs to do more. Well, maybe, but also there's only half of him out there. There's half a half out there. So it is going to be a bit disorganised. It's a great point. I also think we suffered with our bench. When we're at full strength, I'd wager our bench is the best in the comp. But on Sunday, you could feel the game drop off with the rotations. And I agree with that. I definitely thought once the bench got into action, it was not as impactful. We saw it, Newcastle just win the ruck pretty easily.
Yep.
And Peter says, lastly, I feel Atkinson is starting to edge ahead of Tricky as the preferred number 2 half after Nico. Keep up the great work with the pod. Look forward to them each week. Thanks. That's from Sharky Pete. That's awesome. Thank you so much. The legendary RCB has been in touch, asking, was a return to the Flano era with that, or he's stating it, a return to the Flano era, dumb, gritty, and snuck home. Kafusi probably had his best Sharks game. I remember another game where he was almost as good, but yeah, I think that's a good debate to have. That was a very strong game from Kafusi, as you said, TK. You also say we actually need a halfback, and we missed Tall Tom's size off the bench. We missed Iro's defensive efforts on the edge. In terms of the 17, when people are fit, I agree that we need Atko there. He's a great cover guy. Hines should be 6. Trindle should be 7. For the rest, I would go Atko at 17, which means you need your 5 fittest middles to rotate the minutes. And of course, you need Britton and Teague to play for 80. That's a great point. And that's something when we were talking about the bench, TK, and who I would have, I would just go, like RCB's nailed it, I would just go for the fittest guys. So it means, Tuku, unfortunately, if we're all fit, it's not your time.
Yep.
Thankfully for Royce, his form is through the roof, so yes, you can play. But if it was sort of the older Royce who wasn't really bringing it, no, because you're not the fittest. So I would go with that plan, battle of the fittest, if they're all ready to go.
Yeah, I think that's another, that question you asked me about before about entering the finals. I think that's another point that I didn't bring up, the fact that there's a lot of competition now for both the starting props and the bench, which I think will bring out the best in everyone. And then the fact is, we do have the ability to change it up anytime that we want, which I don't think we had last year.
He's also saying that Ueli needs to actually be fit and raring to go to be a real option. So for RCB, I think he needs a month of really good footy to be considered that elite prop, benchy, whatever you want to call him. And I think that's a fair statement. And it's just unfortunate. He's had weeks on, weeks off. We've seen him come in and out of the team. It's hard to, we saw him with a couple of errors on the weekend. And it's hard to kind of get into that routine if you're not playing regularly. So it's a good point. And I love this one. And I want to ask you this, TK. He's talking about the derby. And Michael asked me a question. And I think you know how I would answer, but let me ask you this. He said there hasn't really been a derby day with anything riding on it for a while. When was the last time a derby mattered? And obviously every derby matters. But do you agree with that there hasn't really been one that's meant anything as far as the ladder and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, because usually it's one of us well, I guess we've had a lot more success over the last 10 years than the Dragons have. But before that, before Flano's little period, it was probably the flip side, right? Because then they were in the top 4, they were winning premierships, we weren't. So I guess it has been a little while where we're both contending, right? And I guess the Flano factor puts another kind of emphasis on here. But the 4, the 8 for them, Flano, and then there's a whole heap of different things happening. I do think that this is probably the first time in a while that we're having 2 true top 8 contenders actually vying in a game. So yeah, bring it on.
Adam has written in and said, if I'm coach, when everyone's fit, I'm dropping either Trindle or Hines. You've got to have Atko in that team. A couple of weeks ago, I questioned if Hines had enough mongrel. Sunday's effort by Atko was what I meant by mongrel. Mental mongrel as much as brave mongrel. Maloney had it, and Atko has it. 1 try assist, clutch goal from the sideline, field goal and golden point. So far, Sharks Player of the Year, not to mention possible NRL Rookie of the Year. Great first 7 minutes, great last 7 minutes. The rest was rank. He also says, I don't think the ground announcer has been listening to the podcast. Cheers, thanks for the pods. That's from Adam. So, Adam's got Atko in our starting half. What do you think about that?
That's fair. I think I think it's like we spoke about before. If we go conservative, which is the coach's style, well, it's going to be tricky in Hines. But if he wants to kind of show something that kind of probably has been working better, then I think that that Acco and Hines, I think, is your pair.
Okay. Different Adam has written in and talking about the field goal attempts. He was talking about how it was hard to see a little bit at the ground, but he knew that when Acco kicked the field goal, the Sea supporters behind the post all jumped in the air together. I knew it had gone through. What a relief. It was fun to be there. We didn't seem to have the sufficient energy to get on top of the Knights forwards and to speed up our game throughout the game. I'm wondering, and you can tell me about this, TK, being the elite athlete that you are, and people ask me this stuff, and I just sort of shrug my shoulders and go, I don't know. I've been wondering whether our pre-game warm-up sometimes takes too much energy out of the guys. If they're smashing bags and sprinting at full tilt, they've naturally lost that potential energy used to do the work prior to kickoff. I'm no fitness expert, but I often think we need to warm up for less time and go easier on the boys so they're warm but retain their energy for the game. What are your thoughts on that, TK?
They're wearing heart monitors. They're getting monitored for every little inch that they're doing. Like, they're not getting overdone at all. So it's actually quite monitored. It's probably what they need to be doing out there, because essentially they've got like a lot of sports science into everything that they're doing these days. So if they thought that it was an overkill, they definitely would be starting to reduce it. But like, there's such extreme athletes now there as well that, like, essentially, like, doing a 25-minute warm-up plus an 80-minute game, like, most of them could probably play another game on top. Like, that's how fit some of them are.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and I say this with respect, like, as fans, we sort of, and he said he's no fitness expert, so we assume that if we start poorly, there must be a reason, Why'd we start poor? Oh, they were out there warming up too long. I mean, I said this on a few of the other pods, but I got the members okay to go out and check out the warm-up with my son, and they go for it pretty hard. Like, we were a couple of meters away from them, and they were just bashing each other. And even I was like, okay. But as you say, they're all monitored. There are experts everywhere they look. They're monitoring it every second, even at training. Like, it's all monitored. It's all recorded. Yeah. It's all analyzed. They know the second that some person's gone too hard.
You know what, Sam? That would have been a really good question in the 90s, because essentially that would have been a very relevant question, because essentially the sports science was just totally different. The way they trained was totally different. Yes. Like, they're doing a lot of road runs and all sorts of things back in the day, right? So they weren't doing much kind of strength work, and it's just kind of the science right now is just at an absolute premium level that it matches kind of what teams are doing all over America, all over England. Like, it is very the way information can spread and the way that they all speak. Like, a few of my mates are in strength and conditioning. One of them works with the Tigers, and they talk like industry. They always talk with, like, just say if you're one coach for the NRL, you're probably talking to someone in England rugby or someone in the NFL. Like, there's a lot of information being shared everywhere right around the world, which didn't happen in previous years. So a lot of smart people behind the scenes. So it's one of those things that I think it's a great question, though. Like, it is a fantastic question because it's a legitimate question, especially if you're not in that space. But yes, essentially, they're in very good hands.
Yeah. And it's all sort of short, sharp bursts as well. It's not half an hour of constant contact and constant running. Like, there's little bursts where they don't do things or they're passing the ball. It's not half an hour of high impact. But I was surprised, and I mentioned Jack Williams in particular. He was just bashing blokes. It was hilarious. It was it was like, mate, I'll give you $50 if you just stay around for a couple more years. Trish has been in touch and said, love the podcast. We really appreciate that. Thanks, Trish. Now, this is where it gets tricky, where I go across platforms. Oh, boy. Here we go. I want to have a look at this one. No, I don't. Michael was in touch and said, how good's the NRLW going? We haven't touched on that yet, TK, which we should. I've been trying to do it in every podcast. But Michael suggested that after a win, we should play the women's NRLW song, which is just got a slight change of lyrics, and it says the girls in the black, white, and blue, which is awesome. We might get to that. We'll see what happens, Michael. But appreciate the idea. They're killing it, aren't they, TK? Like top of the table, 4-0, even with some injuries.
They've had
Playing a
heaps of
really good
injuries, haven't
brand. Yeah, so
Because Emma's out, right? She hasn't played.
Jada's out for the year.
Yeah.
Emma's back. The other young 5'8" that came in, she was out last week. It's a bit of a jigsaw puzzle, and it's such a short season that you really need to make the most of it. They're 4-0, which is just better than you could have imagined, and a couple more wins, and I'm not even joking. They clinch a finals place. So
yeah, from the 2 games, I've only seen 2 of the games, and Tiana's been absolutely braining.
Oh man,
Jesus.
she's all heart and a lot of skill too. But
she's a good commentator too. I enjoy her comments actually when she does Friday Night Footy. She's really good.
Absolutely. She's a great ambassador for the club. Now, what else have I got for you, TK? A lot of people have replied to the things on Instagram, which is awesome. Thank you so much. Oh, here's one. So this person is going by the name of Ty. I'm just going to call him Ty. What a great looking side for the derby. Check out the bench. Who makes way for Siffer when he's back? I'm thinking Tall Tom. As much as I'm a fan, you add Siffer and Nico, and we're full strength. And Katoa, of course. Any thoughts on that? When everyone's back, who makes way for Siffer on that bench?
It's the ultimate question right now, Sam. But I think I think Jack and Tall Tom play really well off the bench together, and then Siffer's got a one spot. So, and then you spoke about Royce being in career. So I think maybe Braden makes way because of what you said before, health, right? Like you want a guy that you can kind of rely on each week, and I don't know if we can get that out of Braden at the moment.
I mean, I guess at worst he goes back to Newtown, gets some minutes in, and then either out of good form or if there's an injury, comes straight back in as the Hamlin Welly we love. But we'll see how he goes this week. Named to play this week again, so I believe in the guy. I really do. It's just been a bad year for him with injuries.
Yeah. Is that working, but Sam, the Newtown thing? They've tried it a few times now, and it just seems that...
Well, it worked for Toby.
It did. But I think they're in different scenarios. I think Toby was more form. I think Braden's more kind of body.
Yeah. Yeah, what? So you think it might be a bigger risk or something? Or
yeah, a little bit of bigger risk. Like I don't know if getting him minutes down there is doing anything really for him. He's done it like 2 or 3 times now, and then he's come back and just literally got injured. Maybe it's best we just carry him as the 18th man. If there's an injury, then essentially he comes first man into the squad.
Tidy also said, I heard you talking about the competition for members to vote on the halftime song. I'd like to see more of this. It got me thinking, why not bring back Heroes by David Bowie? It was popular back when we used it for ET's retirement season, the Pepsi days, and I remember it working well. Cheers. I mean, look, you should drop the club a line and say you enjoyed that process, and we'll see what comes of it. I don't know if I'm out of line in saying this week might be Old Boys. No, sorry. The Warriors game might be Old Boys Day, so you might see a bit of retroness happening there.
Sam, with the music, you being in the music scene, do they have to pay a royalty if they use the song at halftime or anything like that?
I mean, they should be. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how
that might be the reason why
that gets checked up. Yeah, it could be. But most songs these days are usable if you pay for them in that environment. It's different if you're using it for a commercial at a movie theater like they did in the 90s, whatever. Like that's big bucks. Playing at your stadium, as far as I know, is probably the same as playing a Sam Shinazzi song. You know what I mean? I think it's a small fee that you pay, but it could be. It could be. I'm not sure. I might have to ask our friend Jess Chich about that kind of stuff. But appreciate Ty being in touch. Our friend Smitty's replied a lot. Oh, I do want to give a shout out to our friend Donnie Rogers, part of the Rogers clan, of course, friend of the show. Now, I don't know how he's gone, TK, because we've been recording while this has been happening. But tonight, pre-recorded for him, he was on The Voice, dude. So if people don't know Don Rogers, he played lower grades for the Sharks. Yeah. His brother is Matty. His dad, Steve. He's been on SharkCast a lot in the early years. Great fella, good friend of mine. He recently, in the last, 2 or 3 years, picked up a guitar and started playing some country music. And people were like, oh, you're pretty good. You're pretty good. And he's just been doing it nonstop every day. Started playing gigs, practicing every day. He and I have been talking a lot, particularly about 6 months ago when he was just sort of finding his feet in the biz.
Yeah.
But he's taken the step of trying out for The Voice, and he's on TV tonight. I don't know. People who are listening now will know what the result was, whether people turned around for him or not, however that works. But wanted to give Donnie a shout out. If he progresses in the show, hopefully he does, get behind him. Great fella and really talented guy at what he's doing. Got a great grizzly voice, TK. Grizzly kind of.
I love it.
You know, a bit of bourbon and Coke. And
is it live, Sam, when they put the voice on? Is that essentially how it is, or is it recorded?
So it's pre-recorded, so I'm not sure how it went down. But then I think it'll become live in the coming weeks for the successful people. So essentially,
nice.
If people turn around and want him on the show, he progresses. If they don't, they'll say, "Hey, you're really good. Keep trying." It's all very positive. So we'll see what happens. If he keeps going, we'll definitely support him. He's not the first music TV show person we've got across the line, so hopefully we can get 2 in 1 year. But we send our thoughts to Donnie. Our love to him because he's a great fella.
Smash it, Donnie.
I did want to give a shout out to a fella called Mitch Kelly. He's got a podcast called Life's a Mitch, and I was lucky enough to be a guest on that show today. That podcast is out on his stream. It's called Life's a Mitch, as in MITCH. And we talk about SharkCast a lot. We talk about my life as a musician, etc. And he talks about his life. It's like two creators coming together, having a chat. It's been a long time coming.
Yep.
I'm going to put up an edited version on our feed, TK, because there's a lot of stuff that probably just doesn't relate to what Sharks fans want to hear. But there is some Sharks content on there. So if you want the unedited version, go check out Mitch's podcast. And you can have a laugh at how silly my life is. Now, any word on the Hall of Fame, the immortal thingamajiggy NRL happening tonight? Any breaking news?
All I've seen is the big three, I think, got it inducted. Slater.
Into the Hall of Fame.
And, looks like the 14th immortal is Ron Coote. Is that
him? That's him.
Yeah. 14th immortal, Ron Coote. 24 inductee is Cameron Smith, Cooper Cronk, Sam Burgess, Greg Inglis.
Yeah, so those guys were announced, but it looks like Ron Coote is your new immortal, which is
Ronnie
cool.
Coote.
I mean, he's
Everyone
before my
loves
time,
Ronnie Coote.
Yeah. All right, that's cool. Now, where are we going here with the mail? The mail's getting out of hand. I need an assistant. Swear to God. All right, let's go over here, TK. Here we go. Now, this fella does not mince words, all right? I'm going to have to try and get this right. This is from our friend Brent, and he feels the Sharks, man. He feels them. He said that was the most my heart has beaten like 100 times faster than normal. We almost blew it, but hung in there to get the win. However, because Brent, and he won't mind me saying this, he's more on the negative train than the positive train. Still not convinced we're anywhere near where we should be. We had a lot of team changes. That's nobody's fault. But with so many changes, we had problems. No halves leading our attack. We did miss Tricky and Nico. So he understands why we're like that, but he's not happy about it. He's on the Stone Street train. He thinks he should have played instead of Ronaldo not being 100% fit. They're lucky they got home. Hope Trindle's back next week against a team I loathe. The little sister, the merging losers. Now you're talking my language. Yeah, so Brent, appreciate all that. Up, he says. Big fan of the team, Brent. He feels it. And the word lucky I myself used on Sunday night in the post-game show with Gaz, but I kind of took it back because, I am a believer in sometimes you do make your own luck, TK, and I thought they fought their way back into it. The last 10 minutes, go watch it again if you haven't watched it back. Like, they were fighting hard for every moment. I can't remember when it was. It might have been when Atkinson took the penalty shot with 10 to go. There was a team huddle, looked intense, and then we went away with it. So I thought they earned it.
Good teams find ways to win semi, so that's exactly what happened.
This is from Paul. He calls himself Policeman Paul from Melbourne, so I don't really know what that means, but maybe he's a policeman. I'm not sure. I guess that's what it means. From Melbourne, Shire boy for 30 years, moved down south. Wondering what you think of this. Now, this is a bit kooky, Paul, and I'll see what TK thinks about it. It's not too kooky, but it's something we hinted at before. A 5 or 6 point try idea. If a team scores a try with the ball starting in their own half, you get a point or two more for that result. So long range try, he wants to bump up the points. It would get the game a bit more creative than the current block plays and kick on the fifth tackle. What are your thoughts? P.S. Love your podcast. Well, I appreciate that, Policeman Paul. Look, I like the fact that you're thinking ahead of the game and you want to get more creative. I'm not a fan of the block plays. That's why I love the NRLW so much. But it's a bit too kooky for me. Paul, what do you think, TK?
Yeah, maybe if they redo the nines, I would love to see it in that. But in terms of like a NRL standard, then no, unfortunately. But it's good to hear him, like you said, like thinking outside the box. Different ideas, innovation. Sure. Maybe they can try the New South Wales Cup, see how it goes.
It's a little bit too Super Rugby for me, right? Isn't that kind of what happens? Like different things for different, not so much the points, but the competition points and the bonus points and I don't know.
I don't think it changes anything anyway. Like I think teams are too like when teams score long range tries, they're not attempting to score long range tries. It just happens naturally, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. I'll tell you who defends long range tries really well: the Cronulla Sharks. They've barely given up one all year. It's been something I've been looking at in the stats, and their defense is not spoken. The defense is not spoken about enough, and some of the channels in there on the field, if you think of it as left touch, center, right touch, some of the channels there for the Sharks, top of the NRL. Like it's overall the defense is probably top 3, top 4, but there are some parts of that field that just you cannot get through. So I think that the Fitzgibbon defense reputation is starting to grow a lot more. I know it was a bit murky there for a while. Yeah. And some weird stuff was happening, but I think we're on a good thing. I think it's the last bit of correspondence. I hope I haven't missed anything. Jay says, hello again. I wanted to start by saying how good a job you guys are doing on the podcast. It's enjoyable listening every week. Wondering if you're going to do a special semi-final game day podcast pre the Sharks' first semi. Be a good way to keep up to date with everything on the game day situation. So on that, Jay, I don't know if we're going to necessarily do a game day podcast pre-game. What I would like to do is have a gathering, get all the fans together and get all our nerves all in one room. That'd be a lot of fun. We're probably also going to look at doing a show during the week before the finals. And if we can get everyone together, that'd be fun. See what happens. It's a crazy world we're living in. Everyone's got so many responsibilities, but we'd love to do something like that. So keep in touch, Jay. Stay tuned because we're always trying to not reinvent the wheel, but we're always trying to do things that we haven't done. So stay tuned. If you're coming over to Vegas, hopefully we're going to have a bit of fun over there. You coming to Vegas, TK? Is that TBC or it's a no-no?
No, it's a no-no. If they played Canberra, I would have. Because I've got a few of my mates that are going, Canberra fans. My best mate actually lives in New York, and he's a Raiders fan. And I've just been to Vegas too many times. My 40th was in a dark hole for a long, long time post. So I just don't want to do that ever again.
Young Kieran on the show, he goes there a lot for work, and he has that similar kind of tone when he talks about Vegas. He's like, "Oh, Vegas, I don't know." It's like, I'll be there with you, bro. I'll look after you. It's all good.
You say that,
what trouble could we get into? You know,
it just takes you. It just takes you to different levels. But there is Vegas for everyone. I was saying this to some of my female friends from work, like because they were thinking of going and they were thinking it was just party. And I go, no. If you want to like make it just day spas and just do that with the girls, you can like literally do that if you really want to. If you want to turn it into a rock star event, like if you just want to do shows, you can do just your shows. Like if you're an NFL guy, you can go watch the NFL Raiders now. Like, there's an NHL team there. Or if you're a gambler, you can go right across the whole circuit, gamble. If you're a partier, you can do that. So there's a Vegas for everyone, I feel.
The one you're not touching on, TK, and obviously it costs a little bit of money, is if you're a foodie. The restaurants are unbelievable.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things that probably if you go there for party, you're not really eating too much. But the other thing, actually, Sam, there's one thing that I really want to go to is that Sphere. That Sphere looks unbelievable. So
well, come on over. We'll go together. We'll both look at the big Sphere and go, ooh, look at that eyeball looking at us.
Mate, the UFC are actually having a fight night there in, I think, next month or something.
Oh, really?
In the Sphere.
So the guy gets knocked out and he looks up and he sees the big eye looking at him. What about this, TK? What about this? Do me a favor. Don't rule it out. Don't rule it out.
I'm not ruling it out, mate. I'm not ever ruling it out.
You can always get a hotel room. You can always get a flight, you know?
Yeah.
All right. We'll keep working on you. So Jay says, a lot of criticism about the 1-point win. Here's my take on it. We had numerous players out of position. We had no leadership in the halves. We lost 2 big players in Iro and Hazleton. We had Tricky still missing. Talakai back in the centres. Atco won us the game, and it wasn't even his best game. However, Kafusi had his best game yet. I hope that's the way he plays from now on. I don't think... So Jay also says he doesn't think Ronaldo should have been out there. It should have been Stone Street. So that's 2 in a row for that. So what are you saying to me, Jay? You're saying... Well, you're saying that it was a decent win given the situation. Then you move on to the derby. And you talk about missing Sione Katoa. You're not worried about the mergers, as you call them. The mergers don't bother me. I don't know if I've heard that one before, TK. The mergers. The mergers don't bother me. I have no fear of them whatsoever. They're a team that's been lucky to get a sniff of the 8. I don't rate them on paper. We're far better. And all we have to do is put it together. It's a game we can't lose. We need to beat this lot and keep bragging rights. Imagine them winning. We'll never hear the end of it. As long as we turn up and start fast, get a decent lead, that should be enough. Now, what else are you saying, Jay? The inclusion of Tricky and Iro will be a huge boost compared to last week. Teague is also named to play. Hoping we can make it 3 from 3 with the women and the Jets. We want that club championship. Just on that, how good are the NRLW going? I'd love to see them be undefeated premiers. Let's get the win, boys and girls. Up. Jay, that's great. Great correspondence, Jay. Really appreciate it, taking the time. Look, we don't like the mergers either. TK, is the club championship still a thing, or is that just something that we talk about? Is it still a thing?
No,
remember in the big league it used to be a thing? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think the Dogs won last year. Pretty sure.
So it can't be NRLW, though, because not everyone has a team, right?
No, it's not NRLW. I think it's... Okay. I don't even think NRL counts. I think it's all the lower grades, man.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so. Because how old are the Dogs would have won last year? I'm pretty sure the Dogs won last year.
Okay, we might look at that. I remember the old club championship. You didn't win the comp, but you won the club championship. That was, a lot of my life growing up. I think that's all the mail, guys and girls. If we've forgotten anyone, if we've missed anything, we will certainly get to it. So appreciate that. As you can see on the screen, if you're watching, you know how to get in touch with us. If you're listening to the podcast, which most of you are, SharkCastPod@gmail.com. DM us, SharkCastPod. TK, we're going to get out of here, but super appreciate your time. We love you lots. Thank you so much for being on. Give me a quick prediction on what's going to happen on Sunday, please.
Oh, thanks for having me first up. Always love coming on SharkCast, and I've missed it. So thank you for the invite, Sam. On Sunday, I do think that I just like us 1 to 17. Looking at us versus them 1 to 17, I think we're more of a complete team. I think we're actually a better team, and I think we'll bring it on Sunday. I think the boys will be up for this one because I actually do think that the Dogs might get upset by the Wars, and then essentially we'll wrap up the top 4 by essentially winning on Sunday. So I think that will be a little bit too good. I think it'll be the Sharks 26, the Dragons 12.
26-12. I could live with that. That'd be good compared to last week's Heartstopper. So hopefully TK's right. He usually is. So let's go with that one. Now, for everyone listening, watching, thanks so much for being in touch. All being well, we're going to have at least a couple more episodes for you this week. One is coming on Friday, which you have been asking for. We'll leave it at that, but it's going to be a fun one, that's for sure. Buckle in for that one. Again, all being well, it's going to happen. And until we speak to you next, which hopefully will be soon, thanks so much for all your support, all your kindness. Really appreciate it. And we say it a lot. We mean it every single freaking time. You guys and girls are the best. And we could do it without you, but we don't want to do it without you because it's not as much fun. So stick with us. SharkCast Pod. We're going to be in your grill, and we're going to be in the grill of the Dragons this week. We don't like them. Let's go get them. Sharks to win 26-12. You heard it here first from the legendary TK. We're out of here. TK needs some sleep. I certainly need some sleep. Up, Cronulla. One more time. I'm just going to play the song. Let's play it. Let's get out of here. Let's play the song, TK.